Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Beyond the Gates channel. Hope you're having a wonderful day. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe and hit like for more daily drama updates and spoilers. Your support truly means a lot and helps our channel grow every day. Now, let's jump straight into today's exciting update. The emotional aftershocks from the week's earlier events continued to ripple across Fairmont Crest as Thursday arrived, carrying with it a series of revelations that would forever alter the futures of several families. What had once been ordinary conversations around kitchen tables and hospital hallways now felt weighted with impossible choices, unspoken fears, and the fragile hope that somehow tomorrow might offer a little more peace than today. Every character seemed to be standing at a crossroads, uncertain of which path would lead to healing and which would only deepen the wounds they were already carrying. Beneath the surface, secrets that had been carefully hidden for weeks threatened to emerge, while the bonds of family faced yet another relentless test. It was becoming increasingly clear that no one in Fairmont Crest could escape the consequences of the decisions they had already made. Naomi finally gathered every ounce of courage she had left and sought out Dani, determined to reveal the truth she had been carrying alone for far too long. Dani initially braced herself for a completely different confession, believing her daughter was about to admit to betraying Jacob while he had been away working undercover. Instead, Naomi immediately dismissed that possibility, making it clear that faithfulness had never been in question and insisting she would never destroy her marriage that way. The unexpected reassurance was bittersweet for Dani, whose own complicated romantic history made those words land with uncomfortable force, but the true confession proved far more devastating than anything she had imagined. Naomi revealed that she had tested positive for the BRCA gene, a discovery that suddenly cast a long shadow over her future and forced her to confront possibilities she never wanted to face. Overwhelmed by the burden of carrying the diagnosis in silence, she admitted she had no idea how to tell Jacob, and although Dani's own emotions were swirling beneath the surface, she gently encouraged her daughter to stop carrying the weight alone and trust the man who loved her. Elsewhere, another chapter quietly came to an end as Kat sat down with Anita and Vernon to share life-changing news of her own. She explained that she had purchased a condominium and would soon be moving out of the family home, a decision that instantly filled the room with mixed emotions. Anita couldn't hide the sadness in her eyes as she realized their familiar evenings together, especially those spent laughing over true crime podcasts, would soon become treasured memories rather than daily routines. Vernon, though equally emotional, recognized that growth often required letting go, and he accepted that this was an important step in Kat's journey toward independence. Kat herself reflected on how much her relationship with Anita had evolved over time, explaining that when she first arrived, she had simply seen Anita as her grandmother, but somewhere along the way, that relationship had transformed into something even more precious, a genuine friendship built on trust, laughter, and unconditional love. It was a heartfelt reminder that families are not defined solely by blood or tradition, but by the relationships that deepen through shared experiences. Across town, another family found itself discussing the uncertain future of young love. Samantha informed both of her fathers that Jessica had quietly decided to end her relationship with Tyrell once the summer came to an end and college began pulling them toward different futures. Tyrell, however, wasn't prepared to give up so easily, believing there was still hope he could convince Jessica to stay closer to home instead of attending UCLA so they could continue building a life together. Martin and Smitty listened with growing concern, understanding how deeply their son had invested his heart in the relationship and fearing the heartbreak that might be waiting around the corner. Their worries only intensified when Tyrell unexpectedly returned home with Jessica, both proudly displaying brand new tattoos that immediately became the center of attention. Jessica's tattoo honored one of her favorite quotations from Audre Lorde, while Tyrell revealed an enormous letter J inked permanently onto his body. Though everyone naturally assumed it represented Jessica, Tyrell insisted with a straight face that the tattoo actually stood for June, leaving his family uncertain whether to believe him or simply recognize the desperate optimism of a young man trying to hold on to love. Not long afterward, Kat arrived at Martin and Smitty's home, where she and her brother finally confronted lingering emotions from the difficult period surrounding Eva's medical crisis. They apologized to one another for the misunderstandings and emotional strain that had developed while Kat was wrestling with the possibility of donating part of her liver to save Eva's life. The heartfelt exchange served as a reminder that even the strongest family relationships can fracture under extraordinary pressure, but they can also heal when honesty replaces resentment. Their reconciliation carried a quiet, emotional power, proving that forgiveness often arrives not through dramatic gestures, but through sincere conversations and the willingness to acknowledge each other's pain. In a week filled with conflict and uncertainty, their moment of understanding became one of the few genuine victories. Meanwhile, Dani found herself leaning on Andre as the emotional weight of everything happening around her became impossible to ignore. She confessed what Naomi had shared about the BRCA diagnosis, and Andre gently observed that Dani still hadn't truly processed her own positive test results or seriously considered what her next steps should be. Dani immediately became defensive, explaining that her mother's cancer diagnosis, the devastating tornado, and countless family emergencies had forced her to place everyone else's needs ahead of her own. Her frustration boiled over as she questioned why Andre seemed to criticize her for putting her family first when that was exactly what she had always done. Yet beneath her anger lay something far more vulnerable: the painful realization that she had spent so much time protecting the people she loved that she had forgotten to care for herself. It was an emotionally charged conversation that exposed the exhausting burden Dani had silently carried for far too long. As evening settled over Fairmont Crest, Naomi finally returned home, determined to have the conversation she had dreaded for weeks. Sitting down with Jacob, she confessed that she had tested positive for the BRCA gene, watching his face shift from confusion to heartbreak as he realized she had endured the terrifying diagnosis alone. Jacob admitted he was deeply hurt that she hadn't trusted him enough to tell him sooner, not because he felt betrayed, but because he wished he could have been beside her every step of the way. Before either of them could fully process that revelation, Naomi shared another devastating truth. She was seriously considering undergoing a preventive double mastectomy. The room fell into heavy silence as the magnitude of that decision settled over them both, leaving husband and wife staring into an uncertain future together. There were no easy answers, only the quiet understanding that their marriage was about to face one of its greatest challenges yet. Friday brought another emotionally powerful chapter as Naomi and Jacob continued the conversation neither of them had wanted to have, but both knew was necessary. Jacob admitted he needed time to absorb everything she had shared, recognizing that such life-altering decisions couldn't simply be accepted in an instant. Yet after allowing himself a moment to wrestle with his emotions, he looked at Naomi with unwavering sincerity and assured her that this was ultimately her body and her choice. Whatever decision she made, his role wasn't to control it, but to stand beside her with love and support. Naomi, however, remained haunted by memories of previous disagreements, particularly the painful period when she believed she might be pregnant and their perspectives hadn't always aligned. She desperately needed reassurance that he wouldn't quietly resent her decision months or years later, and Jacob answered with complete honesty, insisting that what mattered most was preserving the life they had built together and ensuring they had as many healthy years ahead as possible. At Orphe Jean's, another reason for celebration quietly unfolded as Smitty met with his editor, who arrived carrying exciting professional news. She praised his investigative series on the plasma ring, revealing that the articles had impressed her enough to submit them for a prestigious DMV Press Award for Excellence in Local Journalism. While congratulating him, she also explored a complicated professional question, wondering whether he could remain fully committed to investigative reporting if Martin truly decided to launch a Senate campaign. Smitty answered without hesitation, explaining that his dedication to honest journalism remained unwavering, even while standing proudly beside his husband. After his editor departed, June joined him for a warm conversation about the nomination, Tyrell's future, Samantha, and of course the mysterious tattoo. Despite Tyrell's insistence that the giant J honored her, June laughed softly and admitted she didn't believe that explanation for even a single second. Jacob later stopped by the restaurant to pick up the cornbread he had ordered, giving him a chance to reconnect with Smitty during an otherwise emotionally exhausting day. Their conversation briefly shifted toward the lingering investigation surrounding the Impaler, with Jacob reluctantly admitting that every lead connecting Leslie to the case had disappeared, leaving the investigation at a frustrating standstill. Before long, Tyrell and Samantha arrived to visit June, and the atmosphere immediately transformed as Tyrell presented his mother with a beautifully framed graduation photograph. The heartfelt gift overwhelmed June, whose eyes filled with joyful tears as she embraced the milestone her son had achieved. For a brief, beautiful moment, all the worries about tattoos, relationships, and uncertain futures faded into the background as a proud mother celebrated the remarkable young man standing before her. Elsewhere, Eva and Isaiah enjoyed precious time together as Eva grew increasingly restless during her recovery. Although Isaiah constantly reminded her to take things slowly and focus on healing, Eva longed to reclaim the normal life that had been interrupted by so much pain and uncertainty. Their quiet afternoon was interrupted when Jacob arrived carrying cornbread from Orphe Jean's, only to discover that Darlene had already stopped by with homemade food for Eva. The thoughtful gesture suggested that Darlene's feelings toward Eva had finally begun to soften, offering hope that old divisions might gradually heal. At nearly the same moment, fate placed Leslie and Darlene together over coffee, where the longtime rivals reluctantly reached an uneasy understanding. Neither woman completely trusted the other, but both agreed that for Eva and Isaiah's sake, it was finally time to stop fueling unnecessary conflict and instead choose peace whenever possible. Back at the hospital, Dani sought out Ashley to thank her personally for standing beside Naomi throughout the frightening journey following the BRCA diagnosis. Dani admitted she still struggled with the fact that Naomi had waited so long before confiding in her, but she refused to dwell on the hurt any longer. Instead, she wanted to move forward as the supportive mother her daughter deserved, and she asked Ashley to describe everything Naomi had endured emotionally since receiving the devastating news. It was a quiet but deeply meaningful conversation, one that reflected Dani's determination to rebuild trust and better understand the emotional burden her daughter had carried in silence. Sometimes love wasn't expressed through grand gestures, but through the willingness to listen, learn, and simply be present when someone needed you most. The week reached a breathtaking climax inside the law firm, where Madison's deposition rapidly spiraled into complete chaos. Mike Davis arrived, overflowing with confidence, carrying himself with an arrogance that immediately unsettled everyone in the room before the questioning even began. As the deposition unfolded, Mike relentlessly pressured Madison, forcing Naomi and Bill to object and counter his aggressive tactics whenever possible. Then, just as Bill finally took over the questioning, something terrifying happened. His words became slow and disjointed, his concentration drifted, and it became painfully obvious that something was terribly wrong. The atmosphere shifted from legal confrontation to genuine panic in an instant, with even Mike abandoning his combative attitude as concern spread across every face in the room. Only Haley appeared to perform concern rather than truly feel it, masking her emotions behind carefully crafted expressions, while Bill's frightening medical emergency sent shockwaves through everyone present and set the stage for an explosive week still to come. The terrifying collapse at the law firm left Fairmont Crest frozen in disbelief, and as a new week dawned, the emotional fallout spread through every corner of the community. News of Bill's sudden medical emergency traveled with astonishing speed, interrupting ordinary routines and replacing them with fear, uncertainty, and endless questions. Friends and family who had spent weeks wrestling with their own personal battles suddenly found themselves united by a single concern: whether Bill would survive whatever had struck him so suddenly. The crisis served as a powerful reminder that life could change without warning, transforming an ordinary afternoon into a desperate race against time. While doctors worked tirelessly behind hospital doors, those who loved Bill were forced to confront painful realities, unfinished conversations, and emotions they could no longer afford to hide. As Bill was rushed into the hospital for emergency treatment, the atmosphere inside the waiting area became almost unbearable. Every passing minute felt heavier than the last as loved ones searched each doctor's face for reassurance that refused to come easily. Amid the anxiety surrounding Bill's condition, Andre and Dani attempted to repair the growing distance that had developed between them during weeks of emotional strain. Their conversation wasn't simple, nor was it free from lingering resentment, but both recognized that continuing to drift apart would only create more heartbreak when life was already proving so fragile. For Dani especially, Bill's medical emergency became another painful reminder that tomorrow is never guaranteed, making every unresolved conflict suddenly feel insignificant compared to the value of genuine human connection. At the same time, another emotional storm was brewing when Chelsea presented Kat with a proposition that immediately left her unsettled. Whatever Chelsea envisioned, Kat instinctively sensed that accepting it could change the direction of her future, and her discomfort revealed just how uncertain she remained about the choices lying ahead. Elsewhere, Nicole quietly wrestled with growing concern as she questioned whether her daughter's latest life-changing decision had truly come from her own heart or had instead been shaped by fear, guilt, and overwhelming emotional pressure. The tension only deepened the following day as Fairmont Crest struggled to regain its footing, while new complications emerged almost without warning. Dani received an unexpected phone call that shook her enough to abandon everything she was doing and make an immediate, unplanned visit, leaving those around her wondering what fresh crisis had suddenly appeared. Across town, Chelsea, Naomi, and Madison stood shoulder to shoulder, presenting a united front against the mounting pressures surrounding them. Their solidarity reflected the growing understanding that none of them could navigate the difficult days ahead alone, and that trust would become one of their greatest sources of strength. Meanwhile, Haley's advice unexpectedly fueled conflict rather than solving problems, driving Thomas into a heated clash with Naomi that exposed fresh divisions neither of them had anticipated. At the same time, Ted found himself completely stunned by Kat's recent actions, struggling to understand the choices she had made and questioning what had motivated such surprising behavior in someone he thought he knew so well. Midweek arrived carrying an even darker sense of anticipation as events began moving faster than anyone could control. Joey found himself shaken to his core after hearing Doug's final words so startling that they lingered in his mind long after the conversation had ended. Whatever message Doug left behind seemed destined to reshape Joey's next move, planting seeds of doubt and unease that refused to disappear. While Joey struggled to process that emotional blow, Deanna quietly transformed suspicion into action. Having already convinced herself that Joey's influence was poisoning her mother's life, she finally launched the carefully calculated plan she had been building in secret. Determined to expose him and remove him from Vanessa's world once and for all, Deanna stepped into dangerous territory where one wrong move could destroy far more than Joey's carefully hidden secrets. At the same time, Jacob accompanied Naomi to an important oncology appointment with Monica, standing faithfully beside his wife as they sought guidance about her diagnosis and the difficult medical decisions that still lay ahead. Their shared determination highlighted the strength of their marriage, even as uncertainty continued, hanging over every conversation. Elsewhere, Haley and Randy quietly worked behind the scenes, joining forces to accelerate their own elaborate con, proving that while some people fought to protect the ones they loved, others remained focused only on manipulation and personal gain. As Thursday unfolded, the emotional pace shifted once again, allowing moments of reflection to emerge alongside fresh tension. Smitty and Martin found themselves reminiscing about the same time the previous year when their marriage had nearly fallen apart beneath the weight of misunderstandings and emotional exhaustion. Looking back on those painful memories reminded them just how far they had come, strengthening their appreciation for the relationship they had fought so hard to save. While they honored the resilience of their marriage, Naomi gathered with her cousins to provide an honest update about her health journey, opening her heart about the difficult road ahead and finding comfort in the unwavering support of her extended family. That sense of warmth, however, stood in sharp contrast to the growing discomfort surrounding a tense dinner shared by Vanessa, Joey, and Deanna. Every glance, every carefully chosen word, and every awkward silence hinted that far more was happening beneath the surface than anyone was willing to admit aloud. Joey remained suspicious of Deanna's motives. Deanna refused to let down her guard, and Vanessa found herself painfully caught between the man she loved and the daughter she desperately wanted to trust. Elsewhere, Pamela offered much-needed comfort to a guilt-ridden Dani, encouraging her to stop carrying the crushing weight of responsibility for every tragedy surrounding her. Sometimes forgiveness begins not with others, but with finally allowing yourself permission to breathe again. By Friday, the week had built toward yet another series of emotional confrontations that promised lasting consequences for everyone involved. Leslie unexpectedly interrupted what should have been a peaceful father and daughter moment between Ted and Eva, reigniting old resentments that neither former partner had truly buried. The encounter quickly escalated into another bitter clash between the exes, reminding everyone nearby that some wounds remain painfully raw no matter how much time passes. Elsewhere, Dani and Haley found themselves locked in a fierce confrontation of their own, with neither woman willing to back down as emotions boiled over into open conflict. At nearly the same time, Kat stunned one of her siblings by expressing an unexpected sentiment that challenged long-held assumptions and revealed just how dramatically her perspective had evolved through everything she had recently endured. Her surprising honesty hinted that the experiences of the past several weeks had changed her more deeply than anyone had realized. Finally, another emotional bombshell arrived when Ted made a deeply personal admission that left Shanice completely speechless. Whatever truth he had been carrying was powerful enough to alter the way she viewed him forever, closing the week on a breathtaking cliffhanger that promised even greater drama, shocking revelations, and emotionally charged confrontations in the days still to come. As one chapter came to a close, Fairmont Crest stood on the edge of profound transformation. Medical crises, fractured relationships, dangerous schemes, family loyalty, and life-altering secrets secrets had become tightly woven together, creating a future where every decision carried enormous consequences. Deanna's relentless determination to remove Joey from Vanessa's life threatened to ignite a battle capable of exposing hidden crimes and destroying fragile alliances. Bill's shocking health scare reminded everyone that life can change in an instant, while Naomi's courageous journey proved that hope and love can survive even the most frightening diagnosis. With old enemies refusing to surrender, families fighting to stay together, and long-buried truths inching closer to the surface, the coming days promise even more unforgettable twists. In Fairmont Crest, no secret stays hidden forever, no emotion remains buried for long, and every ending is simply the beginning of another extraordinary story waiting to unfold.